Am I going to regret not wearing makeup for these videos? Remains to be seen. Hi everyone, welcome back to Project No Buy, and in today's video we're going to be talking about fashion again and what I thought I was choosing when I participated in the trends. So we have an appropriately trendy outfit perhaps, or trendy at one time at least, and that's kind of what I wanted to discuss in this video in a way. And so here I am in my cobalt blue shirt, which I think was a trendy color last year or the year before, perhaps, maybe 2023. You could fill me in if you know more about this. I think it's still out and about, right? The color is still around. It's still, people like it, right? People are making clothing in this color still, but I think that's when it first came on the scene. It was certainly when I first kind of invested in it seriously. And my earrings here, which I think they're a dupe for Bottega Veneta, but I saw them on TikTok a lot back in 2023 again, and got them for myself as a birthday present for 2024 prior to my first no buy year starting and this challenge kind of unfolding. And so here is my 2023 trendy outfit and in today's video we're going to be discussing what I thought I was doing when I chose these things and how a lot of the things that I chose to participate in are things that I no longer have, and the things that have stuck around, I guess, signify something different or something that wasn't what I thought I was getting into when I got into it. So this actually kind of started as a response, or an observation rather, to a comment I got on a video that I made a month or two ago about how I don't follow trends anymore, how I'm finally free, I am finally done, I escaped the fashion trend cycle, hopefully. I mean, I know I can't completely escape just on the virtue of going out in the world and seeing people what they're wearing, and really how the Coach purses that look vintage have taken over, and that this summer was apparently the summer of the white skirt, the long white skirt. And I too have a long white skirt. I did not wear it this summer though, so here we go. You know, I had a chance to participate in the trend and I didn't. And I'm fine with it. Honestly, it kind of makes me want to get rid of my long white skirt, although I won't because it has practical purposes. But back to the comment before I get too sidetracked. I got this comment that said something about how people following trends are like fashion soldiers, following orders from fashion generals. And I'm paraphrasing here, so please don't quote me. I'm not quoting that person. I try not to expose people in my comments anymore in terms of direct quotes after having an incident where somebody was upset that I did so and how I used their words. So dealing with the concept here, fashion soldiers following orders from fashion generals. And again, you may immediately agree with this, or you may immediately kind of bristle at this if you have an idea that your personal style is an expression of you and something that you consciously choose and curate. I know that line from The Devil Wears Prada comes up constantly in these discussions where basically the devil, what was her name? Miranda Priestley was talking about how nobody escapes fashion, and that sweater that the intern was wearing, or Andy, was chosen for her by people at the top, even if she didn't think she was choosing it, or even if she was a utilitarian approacher of clothing. It's not something that anybody can escape from. And I guess the subtext there is that you might as well choose to follow the trends or choose to participate for yourself, because even if you try not to, you will be participating anyway. And it's been a while since I watched the movie, so I don't really know, or read the book even. I think I have read the book, incidentally. I used to be a big reader, but I tend to read things, and I guess reading so much that I forget the details of certain books unless they're firm favorites. I did a whole book declutter and shared what some of my favorites are in there if you're interested. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. I guess, you know, combining these two comments or metaphors or whatever they may be, if you think about being a soldier of fashion and actively following the trends, I guess on some level, if you believe in the Devil Wears Prada ideology of the blue sweater, we are all unwilling participants, and those of us who follow the trends have willingly enlisted and maybe therefore have more power over our style narrative than people who don't really pay any attention to it. And ironically, or ironic side note here, in wanting to be nobody's soldier in terms of fashion and style by opting out, I saw that the long white skirt was the trend of the summer at the concerts I went to, which included Sierra Farrell and then Hozier. And in that crowd, both of those crowds, probably the majority of women, I don't think it's a stretch to say that, were wearing long white skirts. And certainly, okay, if it wasn't the majority, it was certainly at least a third of them. I counted people walking by, and there was variation upon variation of long white skirts. And it did kind of ring bells. Again, I'd already read that comment from the viewer who talked about fashion soldiers. It did kind of feel like this was the fashion soldier uniform being paraded in front of me. And I too have that in my closet. And so it just, whoa. So reflecting on my own journey here, it's like I did enlist myself into this fashion army, but I have since retired, or whatever the word for quitting the army is. And when thinking about it in this way, about having been a soldier following orders from a general, I don't really like it, but I do appreciate that in many ways it was true. And when I confront the clothing that I've regretted buying, and some of this is still hanging around waiting to be used up, and honestly is not going to be used up for a long time, and so now I have these kind of false representatives of my style hanging around. And while I have kind of broken up with the idea that my personal style is something that must be maintained at all times, it still kind of is something I feel intuitively that, you know, when my shoes don't really represent who I am inside, I am a little bit bothered by that. And, you know, not bothered enough to not wear them. And the practical side is becoming stronger, the utilitarian side. And, it's a matter of, look, shoes eventually wear out. With the amount of walking that I do, it'll take years now as opposed to 1 or 2 seasons. But they will wear out, and then you can let go of them and still have shoes, for another season, another year. Again, my approach may change. I may try to resell some of these or save some for, again, growing people in my family. But it is kind of a humbling thought as far as having taken these orders from the trends or the fashion generals and having these regrets as far as I realize now that I didn't need to do that and don't need to do that going forward. And when I feel pulled towards new things or new kind of representations of what my style could be, I don't have to entertain them, even if I feel them, if that makes sense. Feeling them and actually embodying them can be 2 separate things. And I'm not letting myself down if I fail to express my personal style. And I guess that's one of the hardest things that has come up as far as things to relearn or things to let go of or reasons that I've failed my no-buy. And when I do the recap for August, you're going to discover that I debatably have failed again. And I keep on jumping back on the wagon only to fall right back off of it. And the reasons are becoming different, I feel at least, which, you may disagree with. And the justifications keep on rolling on, but I do feel that in terms of making purchases or the reasons behind acquiring things, the reasons are becoming more pure or more legitimate and less justifiable in that they don't really need to be justified. And looking back on some of the mistakes I've made or some of the non-mistakes that I've made in terms of things like buying pants that are bigger and that fit better, that's not a mistake. Those have not been mistakes. And those have been kind of legitimate expressions of having a need that is reasonable and then fulfilling that need. And so I do think that things have pivoted more or less in that direction as far as if there's a need for something, that's when a purchase will be made. And again, the need is the debatable part of this. And there are things that I still admit in terms of things that I've failed my no-buy for that have not been needs, things that have been proven to not be needs by already exiting my life. Some of those have been clothing items. And I talked about that in the very last video, actually, the thread-up kind of experience where I let go of a pair of pants that I purchased during my no-buy year, 2024, and were one of the first reasons that I failed the no-buy year. And so it has been repeatedly humbling. I think one of the pieces that I didn't wear all summer was actually something that I thrifted in January of this year, 2025, when I was so gung-ho about doing a no-buy year for real after failing in 2024. And over the course of doing a public no-buy challenge on this channel over the years that I've been here, I receive comments every now and then about how it's all of our responsibilities to control our own buying decisions. We're the ones pressing purchase on these transactions. We're the ones exposing ourselves to the influence. I might address this again in the August recap because it's been such a recurring theme, and I haven't really known how to handle it other than the fact that my channel here is a personal accountability project. And so maybe I'll save this for that recap video. But I have thought about it and how maybe it's just bothersome for some people to see somebody failing repeatedly at trying not to buy things that they don't strictly need. And in the realm of clothing and style and actual needs versus wants or versus kind of minor tweaks that don't need to be made, I do feel like it gets very nebulous because of the ties that how we express ourselves, the things we wear, the makeup we adorn ourselves with, the accessories, has been so tied to our identities or our public expression, or I guess, again, the fact I talked about it before starting up this video about how I am not wearing makeup today. And I don't know if I'm going to regret that when I go to edit this video or the latest kind of series of videos on this channel where it's still summer for me as far as not having gone back to work. And therefore, I don't really have an occasion to have the makeup on. And so I guess also part of it is having divorced myself further from the narratives of needing makeup, but I do think that part of it is public armor for me, is kind of like putting on a mask so that I feel protected or empowered, or that my identity is kind of camouflaged by having lines of eyeliner and foundation or foundation adjacent products. I don't really like thick foundations just for the feeling of them, but that's kind of unrelated. I don't really feel the need to cover myself up in terms of making myself look arguably better or different or to fit society's expectations of being presentable as it's been summer and as I've been kind of unlearning these narratives. And so we'll see how I feel. Maybe I'll add a voiceover note about how I feel watching myself speak without makeup and the prospect of presenting this to however many hundreds of people might watch this video and have an opinion on my presentation. And I know that there have been points in my past, my own past, that I have looked at people who don't wear makeup ever, who don't seem to be interested in style, who have different priorities in life and don't view what they wear or what they have as an expression of identity. And in the past, I have looked upon that disparagingly. And I have viewed the appreciation of style, of makeup, of that kind of art form, and even kind of considering an art form is debatably helpful. Although, again, I don't want to diminish the expression that it has, right? This is not about taking the power away. It's just about the option to consider it in a different way. I used to view the people who didn't seem to care about it as missing out or not taking advantage of the ability to express themselves in certain ways, of kind of wishing that I would know what they would look like if they were expressing their style. And that is such an interesting thought to the me of today, right? Like, I still like participating in expressing myself in terms of what my style might be. I still have preferences in clothing, and I still take some pride in showing that I've made choices, I guess. But it has gotten to a point where I recently saw, and again, I don't want to necessarily spotlight this creator on screen or anything like that, but I'll just describe it so that we don't get into the dangerous territory of seeming to lampoon fashion creators. But I saw a reel on Instagram about how I wouldn't wear this outfit, what I would do to fix it or whatever. There's so much content like this out there. And the first outfit was a pair of jeans and a top that wasn't tucked in. And it looked fine, honestly. It looked maybe not the most styled, but of course then the creator proceeded to style it up by swapping the jeans out for a pair of high-waisted trousers. And I have high-waisted trousers, right? Like my concert black pair of trousers is a wide leg high-waisted pair, pretty similar to what the influencer was wearing. I have a kind of beige pair that I wear to work on a daily, not daily, but like I wear to work regularly, I guess. I do also wear jeans. And so, you know, this is not about the pieces in question or agreeing or disagreeing that one or the other is better, but it's more about how this is how I would fix this outfit and make it look intentional, make it look styled, make it look like I tried, make it express my identity. And again, the creator proceeded to tuck the top into the trousers, not jeans anymore, trousers, change the shoes perhaps, add jewelry, add belts, add accessories, roll the sleeves up, things like that to make it look intentional. I think that was a direct quote. And I'm just not there anymore. I'm not at that phase of my life anymore, and I don't think it's bad to be there or to kind of pick up tips and tricks from this space as far as looking how you want to look. Again, choosing to present yourself using the tools that are available. I do question trends being a tool that's available. I don't really think that's a tool as much as it is a vehicle for the capitalist machine to sell the next batch of things that they're producing. And I don't like it. I've already kind of talked about that, so I won't dwell on it here. But I don't necessarily condemn all styling choices and all styling advice, but I just don't like to see it anymore. I have moved out of that era for myself. And again, this isn't to talk down to people who make that content or enjoy that content or find it entertaining or helpful or still kind of receive value from that. But it is something that is optional or should be optional in terms of people not being looked down upon for failing to engage with these things, right? Like if people show up to work and they don't appear perfectly styled or appear to have made intentional clothing choices, but their dress code is still perfectly fine for the job, that should not be looked down upon, or they should not be passed over for opportunities, or, it shouldn't really affect anything in the broader context of living a life is where I'm at today. I don't necessarily think that I would have ever been prejudiced against people for not having style. I don't necessarily think that my perception of it was ever to that extent, but it does kind of shed windows of understanding into people that maybe do get like that. People who have felt such intense pressure to fit a certain mold and then end up projecting that pressure onto other people. I shared a story on my music channel about how I did an audition once, and one of the female jury members came to me afterwards and gave me words of advice about not wearing the kind of dress I wore to the audition, which was a red maxi dress, so full length, and I had gotten it at a thrift store. It was a cotton material. It wasn't the most formal thing in the world, but this was an audition for master's programs at college, so it wasn't as if it was in the public eye even, but the woman talked to me afterwards and suggested that I don't wear a garment like that in the future because anywhere there's men involved, that could be interpreted wrongly, and it wouldn't affect whether I got in or not, or the kind of aid that I might be offered, but it was just a word of advice from a female, not colleague, but, mentor figure in the classical music world. And I was mortified at the time, and I was so upset that I took the dress off. I had changed into it at the school for the audition. I took it off and I left it in the bathroom and didn't even take it with me to the next audition. I think I wore black for the next one. But, prior to that incident, I was feeling like I was expressing something. I was showing up as maybe my better self by putting in that effort of having a red dress and, wasn't low cut or anything. Not that there was ever anything to speak of here, but I now know that she was probably projecting things that she has experienced onto me in that moment. And it's not her fault, or it's not her being a bad person, or her trying to take me down in sharing that, even if that was the effect that it had in terms of feeling like I'd been taken down. That was not the school I ended up going to, just, to finish that story. I did get in. I was offered some aid, but not enough to actually go compared to the close to free ride I was offered at the school that I did end up doing my master's at in Texas. But anyway, back to the topic of fashion soldiers and what I thought I was choosing to partake in. When I was or more entrenched in the fashion space, if I had been asked, I think I would have said that I thought I was choosing to partake in that expression of style and self-identity and empowerment. I wouldn't have told you that I was choosing to follow trend leaders or trying to fit a mold or trying to line the pockets of company leaders who sell these things for corporate profits. I would have thought that I was choosing to have fun or exercising my independence and freedom of expression, my right to appear cool or in the know with the current trends of the time. I thought these choices were all conscious decisions that I had full power and autonomy over. And as I continue to learn, these habits run deep and they're very hard to break out of. And the justifications, the mental gymnastics of telling myself that I am not partaking in the same ways now, even if I'm inevitably partaking in the same ways. The considerations are always the undercurrent, right? The style, the identity, the reasons for preferring something over another thing. Like there's that kind of pervasive undercurrent of the narratives we're told about these pillars of society, if you will, fashion and style being one of them in this video. And this happens in so many arenas of life. We think we're choosing one thing, but the reality is that we're choosing another. And I am in the midst of reading Vulture Capitalism. In fact, I have it right here. And in the process of reading this, I'm going to revisit it later. But I am learning that when we choose capitalism, most of us, I hope, or I would guess, I will just say I was one of these people before reading this book, so bringing it back to personal experience. People think that they're choosing a free market system with competition and fair advantage, or everybody having the ability to start their own business or create a product that might positively change lives and earn money doing so. And that's not actually what we're choosing when we choose the capitalist system. And I think this narrative applies to almost everything, certainly every issue in politics, when we think we're choosing one thing, but actually there's this pervasive undercurrent, once again, of all the narratives that other people have wanted to push, I guess the agendas that are being pushed by one party or another party, or both parties or no parties, or whatever it is. And what we're choosing actually has so many other connotations or so many other connections that we're not aware of. And so this is maybe where the personal choice narrative falls short in terms of not being open, not being fully convinced that we're choosing the right thing sometimes. I guess another good example of this is the privacy, online privacy, when we sign up for the social medias and they then turn out to be data brokering our info or letting marketers collect cookies on us, or whatever it is, in terms of not voluntarily signing up for that and also being told that it's good for us. That's another thing that maybe I will or have already talked about, I'm not sure. But we're told that it's actually better for us to receive targeted ads. And people believe this. People have even told me on my own channel that they like the targeted ads because it shows them things that they might actually need. And we fall for it. Again, speaking for myself, we believe these things. I've made however many videos now about narratives I used to believe and don't believe anymore. And it's a painstaking process to get back to the bedrock of what I believe. And that's just kind of messed up, that it takes such time and effort and so much time. For me, it's exemplified by sitting here alone, talking to a camera, parsing these thoughts out. Countless hours have been spent doing this over the past 2 years, and not everybody has the time or energy or privilege to be able to do so. And if it takes this much work for one person to get back to themselves, then how can we hope for a society that's full of individuals that have had this chance to discover themselves again, or to uncover, unearth ourselves from all these narratives of things that we're told to believe, of kind of shrouded implications of all the things, all the policies, all the kind of perspectives of society. And we're going to do many more videos, I'm sure, talking about more specific narratives. So I think I'm going to wrap this one up here for today. I'm sorry if this conversation was a little bit obscure, but hopefully some of you followed along, or maybe some of you are going on this journey for yourself. And I would love to hear about it in the comments below. If you were ever a follower of fashion or trend, or if it resonates with you at all in terms of being a fashion soldier, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, bye for now, and I will see you in the next one.